In it here now, what are you gonna do now? I'm gonna been on here now, who bid $500,000 bid.
Welcome to the Legacy of Agriculture. This program will explore the past, present, and future of agriculture. We'll look at the people, products, and events that have formed its history. And now with today's guest, your host, Chris Bair.
Good morning, everybody. This is Chris Bair, your host of the Legacy of Agriculture. Thank you for joining us and spending time with our show, The Legacy of Agriculture. If you missed the radio show on Saturday mornings, you can also join us on Apple and Spotify. And we have exciting news. Now we are on YouTube, and our channel is called The Legacy of Agriculture. So those of you that want to see us through a audio and a video program, you can go to YouTube, Legacy of Agriculture. Today, my guest on is a longtime good friend, Mr. Bart Roberts. Bart, thank you for joining us here at Legacy of Agriculture. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy day.
Thanks, Chris.
You're kind of a little bit retired, but you're working more now than you ever have.
Yep.
All those grandkids you got running around.
Got grandkids running around, and I've got a couple of kids that are in business for themselves, and I help them out a little bit. And, I stay busy.
Well, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. Bart comes from a unique world, and we talk about agriculture. We eat, breathe, and think agriculture every day, but Bart comes from the cell tower industry and has a very interesting background in the cell tower industry. And one of the reasons why I've invited Bart is because the cell phone business and towers and telecommunication has become an integral, very important part of agriculture. So Bart, you got started in the cell tower business and has recently retired from the cell tower business. You originally started out as Sioux Falls Tower, and now Vikor, and you've retired, but you still do a lot of consulting with the good people at Vikor, correct?
Yep. I still actually had them call me this morning, and they want me to help them on a project coming up in March. I started in the business in 1985. Been a while. I was thinking about this the other day. I was 20 years old, worked for another company, got into the business with some friends, and one of the friends was my partner in Vikor and Sioux Falls Tower. And they invited me to come work towers, so I thought, hey, I'll try it out, and it stuck. And here I am today, now retiring, 36 years later, retiring from tower work.
The cell tower business has treated you very well.
Cell tower has been very well, yep.
You had kind of a rough start in the cell tower business in the formative years, and as a result, there was a real blessing that came as a result of it. You in your early years, you were having problems and you had a cell tower tip over. Tell us a little bit about what happened there, Bart.
Well, so when I started in the business, cell phone hadn't really taken off yet.
So was it more radio towers?
So it was actually a cable TV tower.
Okay.
And so cell phone hadn't really taken off yet, and so we did a lot of TV, radio, two-way radio, and then cell phone probably took off in the 90s, early 90s. So we were just a little bit before that. My partner and I went into business 1989, and then cell phone took off. Well, we had a couple years after into business, 1990. A year later, we had a cable TV tower in North Dakota we were on, and myself and another gentleman were up on a tower. A partner, he was on the ground that day. We were inspecting this tower, and it was a 350-foot tower, and we were 180 feet up on it when the anchor broke. Towers are triangular. They have 3 anchors, and one of the anchors broke. And the anchors are steel round shafts, channel iron shafts that go into the ground so they're in the dirt 4 or 5 feet, and then they go into a concrete block. Well, right where the anchor shaft come out of the concrete block, it rusted off. So we couldn't see it. But so myself and another gentleman rode the tower down. We were 180 feet, which is about 18 stories building-wise. And it fell over, and we both lived. Got banged up pretty good. I broke 12 different bones in my body from my hips down. I don't remember much. I remember starting to climb, so about 10 feet up or so. And then I don't remember much of any of that. And so we were in North Dakota, Langdon, North Dakota, and we both lived. Our partner that was on the ground, he got hold of the ambulance and all that, and took us to a local little hospital there, and then they ended up flying me to Grand Forks. So from my waist down, pretty much broke up, got a lot of pins and metal in my body, but I survived, and I'm here today talking to you. And so, so it took us about a month in the hospital, about three months in a wheelchair. I had to learn how to walk all over again, and by the time I went back to work, it was about 10 months later, and I still had a boot on one of my legs. But we stayed in business, and it was a tough time. We thought about getting out, but we stayed in, and here we are today.
How did your partner fare that was on the tower with you at 180 feet? What we figured, he fared out a lot better than I did. I figured I landed more on my feet, and he landed on his back, and he broke, I don't know how many, he broke about half the bones that I broke. And, he fared out really good. He didn't stay in the business. He got out, but... That was enough for him.
Yeah, and he was just working for us. It was just an employee, so he was just working for us. But
well, we're glad that you're all right. So you remember starting your climb on the tower. Do you remember anything about the fall or coming to the ground, or what was your earliest recollection after the fall?
Now I don't remember. My first recollection was I remember them loading me into an airplane, and it was dark and it was nice and cool. But when I really started to remember, so it happened on a Friday afternoon, and it was Sunday afternoon when I really started remembering things. But I don't remember much of the accident. Now, if I sit and talk with the gentleman that was with me on the tower, if I sit and talk with him, he remembers a little more. So when I talk with him and he tells me, well, this happened, and then I go, okay, I remember.
Well, we're coming down to the end of our first segment, Bart. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. We'd like to recognize our sponsor, Pfeiffer Auction and Realty, for sponsoring the Legacy of Agriculture. We appreciate the good people at Pfeiffer's. For our 2024 spring auction run, go to Pfeiffer's.com or call us 605-836-2277. Nobody does it better. Absolutely nobody does it better.
This is Kyle, equipment sales representative with Pfeiffer's Auction and Realty. Pfeiffer's is proud to provide the best seller experience around. From start to finish, our trained equipment representatives will make sure the right decisions are made to get the most money from your new or used equipment. We believe that knowledge is power, and our reps provide you with the current market estimates to help better understand machinery values. If you want to sell machinery, then nobody does it better.
Hey folks, this is Chris Bair. I'm your host of the Legacy of Agriculture, and my good friend, I've known you for about 10 years now, Bart, wouldn't you say? My good friend Bart Roberts is here, We appreciate him for taking time out of his busy schedule. Thank you, Bart. I appreciate it. So in our first segment, we talked about the early days of Sioux Falls Tower, which is now Vikor, and you survived a pretty tough accident, 180 foot up on a 350-foot tower that an anchor broke, and you came to the ground and you were tore up pretty bad, and they got you to the hospital, and you had quite a recovery, almost a year it took you to recover and get back to work. As a result of that, tragedy oftentimes has the tendency to bring out blessings and the best in people. And as a result of that, you guys decided that you wanted to take on the task of making sure that other tower erectors and people in the industry was safe. So what did you do? Tell us that story.
Well, due to our tower accident, which, I some days wish it wouldn't have happened that way, but it did, and it's okay, and I'm all good. We formed another company called Anchor Guard, which is corrosion control, and we got with a big corrosion firm and came up with a method to protect anchor shafts that are buried in the ground, and it's called cathodic protection. So we came up with the corrosion firm this protection, and they're called anodes, which is they're made out of magnesium. So magnesium will corrode before steel in the ground. So we put this anchor guard system on the tower, connect it to the anchor shaft. They have to be bonded together, and then we came up with a test head that's out of the ground, but on the anchor head of the tower, which the anchor has all the guy wire coming down that holds the tower up. Well, we can test that with a voltmeter to tell the potentials if our system is working or not working, and we've been putting it in the ground in a lot of towers around the country for years, and it works.
So with Anchor Guard, are you coming back and testing those anchors with a voltmeter, or that's already underground, or is that in the initial construction?
Well, the initial construction, we put all this in the ground.
Okay.
We hook it up to the tower, anchor, and put our test head on the anchor head. And some of them we go back and test. We inspect towers a lot of times once a year. So we'll go back to these towers and inspect them. We've educated the industry. So if we sell the Anchor Guard to other tower companies, and they put it in the tower on towers, that they go back and they put it into their inspection reports, and they test it. And we in our inspection report for Anchor Guard, it tells you we give them all the info, what the potential should be on the voltmeter and all that, so they can test it. And if it's reading that it's not testing right or whatever, it tells them what to do and how to do it to make it so it does. But if they're reading good, then we're good. If they're not, we have to either put in a new system because the magnesium anodes will corrode over time. Anodes and corrosion's been around for years, been around since the 50s, and they put it on pipelines and stuff like that. So it's nothing really new, but it was new to the tower world.
It was new to the tower industry and has probably saved a lot of lives as a result of that. Do you ever go back to these towers and find that maybe there was a speck of corrosion that the Anchor Guard missed or your system missed and have to redo it?
Well, so if an anchor, so the way the system works, even if your anchor has some corrosion on it, once we hook the system up to it, it's all in electrolysis in the ground. There's electric running through the ground and stuff, and so you got dirt and steel and copper and all that because towers are grounded with copper. And so once you put the system on, even if your shaft has a little bit of corrosion on it, it stops. The corrosion stops.
Nice. Oh, that's absolutely amazing. And again, we're glad that you're okay. We like you, Bart. We want to keep you around for a while, right?
Yep.
So our show talks mostly about agriculture, and I want to talk a little bit about the cell phone industry and agriculture. I can remember when I was back in college and the bag phones came out, and that was a big deal. And I'm trying to remember that a non-bag phone was $500 and a bag phone was $550 where I grew up. But the problem with the cell phone industry back then is you were only allowed so many minutes, and then it got terribly expensive once you went over the minutes. And so if you had the tendency to talk a lot like some of us auctioneers do, sometimes those cell phones got pretty expensive, right?
Yep.
So we often underestimate the effect that cell phones have in communication in the agricultural industry. So tell me about the correlations about cell phones and agriculture, and how it affects agriculture, and how the communication industry kind of works with agriculture.
Well, cell phones have taken over I'm going to say cell phones have taken over the world.
Sure, absolutely.
In every aspect of it. Cell phones actually started, I was looking some things up. Cell phones actually started in the 70s.
Okay.
But it wasn't really, it wasn't big until about the early 90s when the towers started going up.
Okay.
So cell phones been around a while. They've always had two-way radio and stuff like that where you can talk. But so cell phone took off, and it's changed the world. I remember a tech, one of the first towers we were putting up for cell phone. One of the techs said, and he had one of them old brick phones.
Yep.
And
that's what it was. It was the brick phone or the bag phone.
Yep.
Yep. The brick phone was.
I had a bag phone in my truck.
Yep.
And everybody, friends and stuff would see that. They thought that was just the coolest thing ever. So, because no one had a cell phone.
They could pick up the bag phone, call their girlfriend.
Yeah. So I had the brick phone. So when he had this brick phone, he looked at me and he said, one day everybody in the world will have a cell phone. And he showed me this phone. And I looked at him and I said, yeah, okay, whatever. Well, here we are today. Everyone has a phone, and he talked about landlines will go away, and in most cases they'll go away, and they have. Well, in the ag business, so it's just like anything. The ag business, your cell phone is basically your computer. It's a computer.
Yes.
So, in the ag business and any business, they use it for everything. I have a friend that's an engineer who works with in the ag world. He just called me here a while back, and he's working on putting cell phone stuff into combines, and making it work with combines, and making the rows straight. And he was asking me what was a good. They were a little weak on signal for one of the projects he was working on, and he asked me what was a good cell phone booster antenna. Well, we have some at work that we put on our trucks that work really well. So I told him, and I never did hear back from him. But
that's always a good sign.
That's always a good sign. So,
right.
So cell phones, yeah, it's just taking over the world, and they're computers, and everybody uses them.
Hey, we're coming to the end of our second segment. This is Chris Bair with the Legacy of Agriculture. We appreciate you joining us on our program, and appreciate Bart. In just a few minutes, we're going to be back with our third segment. We'll be right back, folks.
This is Jasmine with Piper's Auction and Realty. We have a great lineup of machinery and farm sales this spring. Many of them already have listings available on our website. If you're looking to buy land or machinery, Go to www.pifers.com to see a complete catalog of our auctions. It's updated daily, so make sure to check back in with us and find the perfect lot for you. When it comes to auctions, nobody does it better.
Hey, good morning, folks. This is Chris Bair, your host of the Legacy of Agriculture, my good friend, and now my neighbor, in a way. Bart Roberts from Vikor, the old Sioux Falls Tower, has joined us, and we're talking about the telecommunication industry and how cell phones affect agriculture and how cell phones have affected all of our lives in a very positive manner. One of the things that I would like to talk about, Bart, because we're kind of we are a radio show about history. Tell us about the evolution of the quote unquote brick phone or the quote unquote bag phone to what we have now as a smartphone, and the technology that has changed over, got to do my 30 years or so. So tell us a little bit about the evolution of the cell phone and the communication with it.
Well, started with the bag phone. As I said, I used to have a bag phone, then we had a brick phone, and then we went to a flip phone.
Yep.
And now we have the phones, the smartphones and all that. It comes down to they've figured out more data that they can put on things and they on these phones, and we went from, everybody's heard of we went from analog to digital, and then you go from first generation, second generation, and now we're up to 5G, which means they just have more spectrum in the spectrum's kind of hard to explain, but it's radio waves in the air that are in the air, and so the more spectrum the cell phone industry has, the more stuff they can put on your phone. And your phone, as I've said, your phone is a computer, and of course it's a phone, and you can do pretty much anything you want.
Use it from everything from reading your heartbeat and your blood pressure to everything now. Yep.
And everything. Sometimes it's good. Cell phone's good, but sometimes they can be bad. You have everything instant nowadays. It's right there in front of you all the time, and so sometimes I like to put my phone down and not even touch it because I don't want it in my face all the time. But it's been a good industry for myself and for the world, the country, and the ag business, everybody.
Correct me if I'm wrong. 4G is probably still the most prevalent form of antenna or communication. 5G is now taking off. Am I hearing rumblings of a 6G?
I've heard that. So, and I've heard. I don't know all the details about some of that stuff, other than I can put the towers up and the antennas and all that. But I've always heard, and I've talked to a few people. 5G. They talk about self-driving cars. Well,
okay.
Cell phone's going to be what does that, and they say that 5G is capable of doing that. So you got self-driving cars. I could see self-driving, combines, tractors, things like that.
We're already there to a certain degree.
Yep,
there's been a lot of
already doing that kind of stuff. So 6G, I don't know what 6G. They say 6G, what that what
entails.
Not quite sure.
It's hard to tell.
So
you guys are building cell towers basically west of the Mississippi. You're in almost every state now building cell towers. I know you've grown and have offices in Colorado and North Dakota and Utah and California.
Nothing in California yet,
but you're building cell towers in California as well.
Yeah, we've been all over the country. So.
I know I was visiting with your partner one day about cell phones, and I was frustrated because there's what we call cell hell, which is you get out into some of these remote parts of the upper Midwest, and there's no cell tower service, and you can go for, it used to be you could go for 3 or 4 hours without cell phone service, and now there's not very many spots where you can drive without, on a major thoroughfare where there isn't a cell phone tower. And I remember talking to your partner, and he says, well, when you go through those areas, mark your longitude and latitude and let us know. Maybe we can do something about it.
Yeah.
So cell towers really have grown. And not only are we finding cell towers on towers, but there's a lot of telecommunication on these wind tower farms and mounting cell phone communication equipment on buildings and water towers. Tell us a little bit about that technology.
Yeah. Well, cell phone, let's go back to analog. Analog, back when analog, you had to have a tower about every 25 miles. Well,
Okay.
when you went to digital, because it's more, I'm going to try to explain that, the signal and everything's more defined, and it has to be closer, otherwise you'll lose it. So towers went to about, with digital, had to be about 10 miles apart. Well, now we're getting up into the 5G, talking 6G stuff. The towers have to be even closer together, and they're trying to cover everything. So if you have a valley in between, and it's a block or two apart, well, they want to hit down into that valley, so they'll put a tower on both sides of the valley, and then point a few of the antennas right down into the valley, so it soaks up everything. So they have to, with digital and stuff, they have to be closer together so they don't lose signal. And I always say the more things they do put on your phone, the more things you can do with your phone, that even makes it so tighter, so it has to stay closer together.
So it's becoming the cell tower industry, and where you put this communication is becoming more and more intense all the time.
All the time.
More equipment.
The more stuff they put on your phone, the more intense it gets.
And the more expensive it'll be.
More expensive.
Every time I get my cell bill, I wonder how much of this money's going into Bart's pocket.
Well,
A little bit?
Maybe a little bit, yeah.
Hey, folks, we're coming down to the end of our third segment. Bart Roberts from Vikor, the old Sioux Falls Tower, is joining me here in studio recording. We appreciate Bart for taking time out of his busy schedule. I'd like to recognize our sponsor, Pfeiffer Auction and Realty. For a list of the spring 2024 auctions, you'll want to go to Pfeiffers.com or call us 605-836-2277. Nobody does it better. Absolutely nobody does it better.
This is Kyle, equipment sales representative with Pfeiffer's Auction and Realty. Pfeiffer's is proud to provide the best seller experience around. From start to finish, our trained equipment representatives will make sure the right decisions are made to get the most money from your new or used equipment. We believe that knowledge is power, and our reps provide you with the current market estimates to help better understand machinery values. If you want to sell machinery, then nobody does it better.
Hey folks, this is Chris Bair, your host of The Legacy of Agriculture. Mr. Bart Roberts from Vikor and the old Sioux Falls Tower has joined us here talking about the cell phone tower industry and its influence on agriculture. We appreciate Bart for joining us. Bart, $100 question of the day is in your 35 plus years of building cell towers, how many towers have you guys built?
That's a tough question. I'm going to say it's been hundreds, but I'm going to say probably 1,000, maybe a little more than 1,000.
That's a lot of cell towers.
We've put up a lot of cell towers. And let me back up a little bit. Cell towers, maybe not quite that many cell towers, but we're in the communication world. And every business out there needs communications. So we put up a tower. We put up a tower for a lot of different companies that need to communicate within their business and run their stuff. So probably cell towers, I'm going to say I'm going to say probably 400 or 500 of them. In the communication world, everybody, probably 1,000, maybe over 1,000.
As we talk about the telecommunication business, I know that in the last 10 years, you guys have had a real focus on the service side. We don't think about let's talk about the stadium or the football arena where a major game is played, or where there's a major a concert where you have 10 to 50,000 people that are in one spot. What does that take from a telecommunication standpoint to support it? If you're in an arena with 25,000 people, you can almost assume that there's probably 20,000 cell phones, or maybe even 25,000 cell phones. How does that work?
Well, that's an interesting question. Yeah, we've done a few things. We helped with the Denny Sanford arena in Sioux Falls. We helped with that. What happens is the owner of the venue, the stadium, will come to one of the cell carriers and basically put a cell site right in their stadium.
Okay.
So, and put the cell site in one of the rooms. They'll have all their equipment in one of the rooms, and then throughout the stadium, we'll put up antennas, and they're usually a little. I haven't seen any of the new technology lately, but most of them are maybe a 10-inch square antenna. You see them in different stores. We put them in stores and stuff like that, big stores. Like a Walmart. If you look in the ceiling, you'll see little white panels on the ceiling. Or if you're in a stadium, you'll see them, little white panels all over the stadium. That's a cell antenna. So that's what's picked. So basically, they'll put a system right in. Well, a big venue like a football stadium, they might have in the one room, they might have enough equipment for like two typical cell sites in there, and yeah, they put it.
So you take
right
a 20,000 person event center or venue, and how many of those antennas or panels, as you've call them, how many of those panels does it take to handle 20,000 cell phones?
That's a
loaded question.
That's a loaded question there. Yeah. I don't even right now. I don't because they're cell antennas and cell equipment are like your computer. They every year or every 6 months they come out with new stuff, better stuff. So they're and they change them out. So they're constantly so for one antenna, I don't even know what they might be capable of handling 500 calls.
Okay.
One antenna. So if you're or a couple hundred. If you're in a stadium, but the more data they put on your phone, the more antennas they need, because it just takes.
So it's not about how many cell phones one antenna will handle. It's about how much data that antenna can handle. So or the number of calls, not the number of phones, but the number of calls or the amount of data that is going through one particular antenna. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. So you could have. So if we're in a stadium, you're making a phone call. That don't take a ton of data to make a phone call. But if I'm sitting next to you and I'm on the internet looking something up, looking at what one of the players, all what they got going and how good they are and all that kind of stuff. Now that takes a lot of data. Now when you start looking up versus just a typical call.
Right. So if I were a young person and I was wanting to get into the telecommunication business, and I love to ask people who have been in their own industry for a long time this question, and I'm a young man or a young woman in high school, and I'm looking for a career and want to get into the telecommunication business, how do I do that?
Well, first looked up a tower company that's close to you, like Vikor. You come in and, of course, you got to apply. And we do the training there's not really a school for our training of tower. There's communication things if you want to get into the radio equipment and stuff. But we do all that training in-house. So come to Sioux Falls and to Vikor and apply, and we'll take you through the process. Now, to be a tower hand, it's a whole different world. We're a construction company, but it's a whole different world in the construction world. You are a tower hand or you're not. It's no in between.
You either like heights or you don't.
You like it or you're not.
You won't find me on top of one of those towers.
So for me, an old guy like me, if I'm interviewing you, just in our interview, I can tell if you're going to be a tower hand or not.
How can you tell?
Just in the way your facial expressions and watching, because I'll start telling you about tower stuff and being on towers and cell phone towers are typically they don't get much over 300 feet. It's interesting. The old analog, you had 400-foot towers, and now they're all with the digital. They're all getting shorter. So we have some towers that are 50 feet tall, or on top of buildings, on top of water towers, or flag poles, and stuff like that. But in our world, we do all communications. So we have a couple towers that are 2,000 feet that you go up on.
So if I'm a young person and I'm wanting to get into the cell tower business and I have an interest in that, the best thing to do is get a hold of a cell tower company like Vikor. Call Vikor. Look them up online, vikor.com.
Yep.
Okay. And you'll actually teach them. You've got all the climbing equipment and all of the tools right there in your building in Sioux Falls to teach and train new employees that want to be in the business. Is that right?
Yep. We built part of our building is, I'm going to say, state-of-the-art training facilities. We actually have 3 different towers that we work on inside. So they're in the building, and we have all radio equipment and stuff in there, and we have the good people to train it.
Bart, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we're out of time, and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. I'm Chris Bair, the host of The Legacy of Agriculture, and we'll be right back next week.
In it here now, what are you gonna do now? I'm gonna been on here now, who bid $500,000 bid.
We hope you've enjoyed today's edition of The Legacy of Agriculture with Chris Bair, sponsored by Pfeiffer's Auction, Realty, and Land Management. Call Pfeiffer's at 605-836-2277.